All right. Ready to dive into Scott Adams and his book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big.
Let's do it. It's a good one.
It's not your typical self-help book, is it?
No, not at all. It's more about, embracing the stumbles on the way to success, which, who doesn't love a good stumble?
Right. And Adams seems to almost celebrate failure.
He really does. It's like he's saying, yeah, you messed up, but guess what? You learned something. He actually has this great anecdote in the book about almost freezing to death.
Wait, what?
Yeah, seriously. He almost died in a snowdrift when he was in college. And as crazy as it sounds, that experience actually led him to move to California, which was a major turning point in his life, career-wise. Because that's where he ended up creating Dilbert and all that.
So instead of letting that near-death experience completely derail him, he used it as fuel.
Exactly. That's the whole point he's making. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about using it as data.
He even calls it turning cow turds into fertilizer, which I have to admit is a pretty vivid analogy.
Yeah, it is. Classic Adams. But the point is, it's not about becoming tougher through failure, but smarter, extracting those lessons,
Right. It's about finding that nugget of wisdom in every experience, even the ones that feel like total flops.
Yes. And using those nuggets to make better decisions next time. It's a much more empowering way to think about failure, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's not about letting setbacks define us, but using them to fuel our growth. So not just accepting failure, but actively searching for the lesson, the takeaway that helps us move forward.
Exactly. It's about approaching challenges with that curious mindset of, okay, what can I learn from this? It's about becoming more adaptable, more resilient.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we're not shying away from those so-called failures, but actually leaning into them, seeing them as opportunities.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of unexpected paths to success, we got to talk about Adams's take on passion, because he definitely doesn't follow the traditional follow your passion advice, does he? Okay, I got to ask about this whole passion is bullshit thing, because it kind of goes against everything we usually hear, about finding your passion.
Yeah, it definitely goes against the grain.
Yeah.
But he makes a really interesting point. He's not saying passion doesn't exist.
Right.
It's more like it's often a result of success, not the cause.
So it's not about finding that one true passion and then magically everything falls into place.
Exactly. He uses the example of Dilbert.
Oh, okay.
He didn't start out with this burning passion for cartooning. It was more like, as Dilbert started to take off, his passion for it grew.
So the passion came after he started seeing some success, not before.
Yes, exactly. And it's like his friend he talks about, the one who built a career around a service that auto-renews.
Oh, right.
It's not that he's over the moon about the service itself, but he created a system that guarantees success. And that's what he's passionate about.
A system.
Yes. And that leads right into his whole emphasis on systems.
Okay.
Because systems, they're repeatable, right?
Right.
They're reliable, way more so than just fleeting feelings or, just kind of going with the flow.
So instead of chasing passion, he's saying build a system that generates success.
Yes. Think of it like Warren Buffett.
Okay.
His investment strategy, it's not based on, random hunches.
Yeah.
It's a system, right?
Right.
Disciplined, consistent, and it's led to incredible long-term success.
That makes a lot of sense, especially for our listener who, they thrive on structure, having those clear takeaways.
Absolutely.
So we're not just talking about vague aspirations here. We're talking about actionable steps, right?
Yes. It's about designing systems, processes that you can follow consistently.
And that can be applied to, pretty much any area of life, right?
Exactly. Want to write a book?
Sure.
Create a writing schedule. Stick to it.
Right.
Want to eat healthier? Meal plan. Prep your meals in advance.
So it's about removing the guesswork.
Yes. And making it easier to build those positive habits.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
It's not about doing a bunch of random things and hoping something sticks. It's about having a plan.
Which, I'll be honest, is kind of a relief to hear. Because who hasn't tried those crazy, elaborate productivity hacks that just fizzle out after a week?
Oh, totally. We've all been there.
Yeah.
And that's actually another thing Adams talks about. Simplicity.
Okay, so even when we're designing these systems, we should aim for simple over complex.
Yes, because the simpler the system, the more likely you are to actually stick with it.
Right. It's the more complicated something is, the more opportunities there are for it to completely fall apart.
Exactly. And no one wants that.
So simple, repeatable systems, that's what we're going for.
That's the key. Systems over goals, even.
Oh, interesting. So it's not about fixating on the end goal. It's about focusing on the day-to-day actions that get us there.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
Because it's those small, consistent actions within a system
Yeah.
that lead to the big results.
Right, right.
It's like building momentum over time.
It's like you're building a house. You wouldn't start with the fancy light fixtures before you've even laid the foundation.
Exactly. Perfect analogy.
So systems are key, but we need the energy to actually implement them.
Absolutely.
And that's something else Adams talks about, right? Like, how do we optimize our energy level so we can actually show up and do the work?
Yes. And this is where it gets really interesting.
So we've talked about systems, but I know you can't just, like, set it and forget it. You need the energy to actually put these systems into practice, right?
You have to actually do the work.
Exactly. And that's something Adams talks about a lot, too.
He does. And it's not just the usual advice like, get enough sleep, although he's a big advocate for that.
Yeah, we all know we should be getting more sleep, but what else can we do?
Well, he talks about tidiness, for one.
Tidiness, like as in a clean desk equals more energy.
It sounds kind of strange, but think about it.
Okay.
Every time you see that pile of clutter, it drains a little bit of your mental energy.
Oh, I totally get that. It's like having a million tabs open in your brain, overwhelming.
Exactly. So a clear workspace, clear mind.
Okay, so tidy desk, tidy mind, more energy to put towards those systems we're building.
Precisely.
What else does Adams suggest for, like, maximizing our energy levels?
He gets into this really interesting discussion about simplifying versus optimizing.
Simplifying versus optimizing. What's the difference? It sounds like we could use a whole other deep dive on that topic alone.
Right. It's a big one.
Okay, but for now, can you give us the quick and dirty version?
Sure. Simplifying is about reducing complexity,
Okay.
streamlining things, making choices easier.
Less is more.
Exactly. Optimizing, on the other hand, is about squeezing every last drop of efficiency out of a system.
Like fine-tuning it to perfection.
Yes. And Adams tells these hilarious stories about his wife, Shelley, who's a master optimizer.
Oh, Shelley, I've heard tales. Didn't she, like, completely reorganize their kitchen to shave, like, seconds off her cooking time?
That's her. She's all about efficiency, which can be both amazing and, a little intense.
Yeah, I can see that.
But it highlights this tendency we all have, right?
Oh, absolutely. We want to maximize our time, get the most out of our day.
Right. But sometimes that drive to optimize everything can actually lead to more stress than it's worth.
More stress than productivity. That seems kind of counterproductive, doesn't it?
Exactly. And that's where Adams's advice is so helpful.
Okay.
He says, especially when you're starting something new, focus on simplifying.
So don't try to do too much at once.
Exactly. Get the basics down first.
Like building a house.
Yes.
You wouldn't start with the crown molding and fancy fixture?
Right. Follow the foundation first.
Then you can add those finishing touches later.
Exactly. It reminds me of one of Adams's key takeaways.
Yeah.
Systems over goals.
We talked about that earlier.
Right. But it's so important.
Okay, remind us. Why is that?
Because we get so caught up in the end goal that we forget about the daily actions that actually get us there.
The system.
Yes. And those systems work best when they're fueled by focused energy.
Not scattered efforts.
Exactly.
Easy.
It's about working smarter, not just harder.
Okay, so we've covered systems, energy management, and reframing failure.
Right.
But there's one big piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about yet.
What's that?
Luck.
Oh, right. Because even with all the best systems and energy in the world, sometimes luck seems to play a role.
Right. And Adams acknowledges that.
He does.
He even talks about affirmations, which I gotta admit, I'm a little bit skeptical about, but also intrigued.
I get it. It's one of those things where it's like, is it real or is it just like selective memory?
Right. Like we only remember the times when our affirmations seem to work and forget all the times they didn't.
Exactly. But then Adams throws out this other possibility.
Okay, I'm listening.
Could affirmations actually be messages from our subconscious?
Ooh, okay, now you've got my attention.
Like, what if our subconscious minds know what we're truly capable of, even before our conscious minds catch up?
That's a trippy thought.
Right. It makes you think about the power of our own minds.
And all the possibilities that might exist if we could tap into that deeper level of awareness.
Exactly.
Well, that's a pretty awesome thought to leave our listeners with.
I think so, too.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Scott Adams's How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, we want you to think about one small experiment you can try this week.
It could be anything we talked about.
Reframing failure, building simple systems, maybe even trying out affirmations.
Whatever sparks your curiosity.
Because who knows, maybe that one small experiment could lead to some unexpected and remarkable results.
Exactly. That's the beauty of it.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep experimenting.